Hey guys, welcome to another podcast of Consult ROI.
Hey, hey.
Today, we got Danny here, by the way. Today we are talking about doing things um, because you feel or were told uh, by somebody else that is something you should do, as opposed to something that you actually know to be true. Um, so this comes into conflict in a lot of aspects of our daily lives. So when it comes to business or personal, so on the business side, it's hey, you really should do X, Y, and Z, and um, and you should get success, or you should just send out all these flyers, and then you should get success. Um, and then when we do it 5 times or something because we're not really sure what we're doing, or it doesn't like it's something that we're uncomfortable with, or we don't really know how to do it or know how it actually is supposed to be done or works. And then when it doesn't work, it immediately invalidates that idea in our head, right? And then we have this distaste associated with that. So there's a great example. I had somebody that said, "Hey," because I told them, it's like, "Hey, what are you doing to advertise like your car detailing service?" He's like, "Well, I'm just putting out a couple flyers and that, and somebody told me that I needed to put flyers on everybody's car." And he's like, "Okay, well, how many did you do?" And he's like, "Oh, like 200, and I didn't get anything out of it." I was like, "Well, yeah, you're not gonna get anything out of it. Did he tell you that you're supposed to do at least 2,000, right, to really get any results?" And he didn't understand that, and so he had just discredited the guy was an idiot and didn't know what he was talking about or anything else. Without the fact is just because we're told something doesn't mean it's not true, or that there's not sections of it that are true. It's just we haven't learned quite why it works or seen for ourselves that it works. And so in our personal life, that often equates to religion, right? We're raised into a religion, or a set of beliefs, or these core values, or lack thereof of beliefs. And because of that, we either feel guilted, obligated, or pressured into believing something that we ourselves don't know to be true, or we are into a state that we have a hard time gaining traction, um, or we fall away, and that's where you get a lot of people that are bitter, like ex-Christians, and this is the same thing with it doesn't matter if it's Christians, Islam, Buddhism, or anything else. It's less in certain demographics, which is intriguing. We're not going to go into that, but you find that especially when people kind of try to shove their ideology down their throats, that's what usually causes that resentment. So if you have resentment towards like Christianity, I would actually challenge yourself to look into that and see if it actually is because of what you researched and found to be true yourself, and actually looked into that and tested different theories, or if it was just because what you were told and because of a discomfort, like an uncomfortable or dissatisfactory,
Satisfactory.
satisfactory. My goodness, I cannot talk today. Okay, like I'm
Yeah,
sure
so
that
far so good. You're doing great, but like kind of as you mentioned that, what it makes me think of is we all I think have those personal relationships where there's always somebody out there going, "Well, Cameron, you know what you need to do is this." They almost have they might have experience, but they don't have your experience. But then when they share their opinion of, you know what you need to do, Cameron, with your computer business, you need to do this. That's like me coming in and telling you what to do with your computer business when that's not my life or my space. But outside looking in, I can like, oh, you know what you need to do is you need to do this. And how well is that going to go over for you? Like if I just kind of waltzed in and it's
not
like,
going to be very well received. And then even if it is true, right? And that's part of this is our own responsibility, right? A lot of this is going to be your own responsibility to take full accountability for our own emotions, how people make us feel. Nobody can make us feel anything, right? So it is completely up to us to be open to understanding that and say, and ask those right clarifying questions to see where their stance comes from. Like I literally just had a conversation with somebody the other day, from one of the conferences that we're doing. Um, he actually is from Israel. He's an old Jewish and everything. And I was actually genuinely curious. Like it came up and that was the topic of religion. And I was like, okay, so which sect are you? Um, and he kind of went into it and basically says, yeah, we like, well, he was uncomfortable at first because he thought I was going to get into like, oh, you killed Jesus or something like that, because he knows that I was at least somewhat Christian. And so he that persist there's a lot of different, so a lot of people don't understand that Judaism, my goodness, is just like Christianity, where there's all these off branches, all these different things, and each one has their own particular set of beliefs. Just like baptism, Jehovah's Witnesses, LDS, whatever it may be, right? The sky's the limit. Everyone has their own opinion. The main consensus, though, if you understand that everybody wants to be a better person, but there's a lot of religions that will also take the little things out of context, twist things, and then alter them for personal gain, which is where a lot of the distaste, or they feel like a lot of people are like, well, see, I'm the chosen people or whatever, so thus that makes me superior to you. When even it says, whether it's scriptures, the Quran, Bible, whatever, they all have the same consistency, where it says the chosen people is people that have higher responsibilities to step up to a higher, like, and even it says, even as being a leader, it talks about serving others. It doesn't talk about controlling, dictating, or anything else. So there's very positives and negatives on that. But because people only see the negatives, you have that negative association, which immediately retracts you away from that, right?
Yeah, and then you instantly like discredit whatever it is that they're saying, or else the truth is actually really hurting, which makes you angry at whatever advice they're giving. Is that right?
Yeah, it does. And
Bothered
so
by it, at
with
least.
this guy, and that he was immediately hesitant, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't believe that there's Messiah's come or anything else. That's ridiculous and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, no, that's fair. It helps me understand your point of view and everything. And I just left it at that. I didn't try to confront them. I didn't try to persuade them to my view or ideology, or give them a history lesson or anything else, right? Because that's always immediately starts a relationship on conflict, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of a distaste, because then anytime they call you, now they have that distaste in their mouth, right? And so a lot of people will also join different religions, regardless of what it is, because of what, like, somebody, they will, a lot of people will join churches or ideologies or anything else purely on the basis of how it makes them feel. Like, and so a lot of people don't understand, like, you're probably 90% of the people listening to this aren't far away from joining cult in some way or another. Because if there's one that actually made you feel amazing, welcome, appreciated on every aspect of life, you would do it regardless of the ideology, right? But it is part of our personal responsibility, I feel, regardless of what they believe in, what their core beliefs are, that you can, like, to take and try to understand, or go to that instead of, so get to a place of understanding as opposed to a place of conviction, right?
Yeah. I mean, because you're going to make a lot, you're going to make a deeper, richer, more meaningful relationship if you do it that way too, to get to that place of understanding. Even if you disagree, like, that's everywhere, right? Like, there's going to be disagreements or people not on the same page everywhere. But if you get to a level of
Most people
understanding of, like,
disagree.
you don't have to completely get all behind what there is. If you disagree, it's like, okay, now I understand where you're coming from, or I can appreciate what you're saying there, and move forward, right? Together, right? It doesn't have to be a win-lose or anything like that in the relationship,
Well, you
or a
can't
right
hate
wrong.
people that you actually understand, first of all.
Yeah. A
And then
common
second,
topic that seems to come up in a lot of our conversations, it seems like.
yeah, it is. And then secondly, it is something that it allows you to have better connections or better understanding of people with different backgrounds and so forth, which then allows you to have a conversation. Now, it's very easy to take some things out of context and believe it to be true. If you want to get extremely controversial, like, yeah, if like I already know I'm going to catch some hate for this, but I don't frankly care. If you look at the entire aspect of BLM, right, or Black Lives Matter, it's on the basis of something relatively good, which is like, hey, we want them to feel like they matter, that they're cared for, that they do all this other like this stuff, and we want to pull them out, enable those people, and everything else. But what they've done is they feel that the answer to that is by causing more racial divide. They actually created an organization which actually has stolen more money from the Black community and done more damage to it than the last 50 years combined. And then they're basically stepping on the other people because of trying to make people feel good, and then using a very skewed statistic on what is actually causing a lot of the violence in that area, which is at the end of the day, it's poverty level, right? Lack of respect for authority, lack of father figures, and a demoralization in society in general. And if you look at anybody in those poverty communities and that are going through that, you'll see very similar statistics, right? So if you actually break it down by poverty or class, you'll actually see that it's fairly universal as far as anything from incarceration rate to arrest rate to whatever else. But as soon as you skew that out. So again, the point of this is it's very easy to believe something just because it makes you feel good and you want to like it's natural for everyone to be like, yeah, your life matters, man. Like, yeah, we believe that. But it's also, if you take that again, that's taking it out of context, and that's where everyone gets offended by like, oh, all lives matter. Well, yeah, they do. And then this is usually where I get the retort of people saying, well, Black lives can't matter until all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. I'm like, they do. Now, there's definitely some people that have worked different neighborhoods that are so used to these people are the ones that are usually breaking into cars. They're dressed like this. They act like this. They do this. That's where a lot of that ignorance or assumptions or systemic racism that they're calling anyway comes from. But the only way to really change that, and this is where it overlooks a lot of things, is the only way to change that is by changing the culture to allow it to become more understanding, more respectful of other people. You don't do that by causing hatred and saying, hey, everybody owes us a debt, because what you're doing is now pissing a lot of people off and actually causing more of the problem you're trying to stop, which is actually why a lot of the media corporations try to shove that down your throat.
Yeah, it's good for ratings, right? Like, I don't know, like it's for them, but
well, they get
it's
understand
trying
that
to rise together,
well,
right?
it's
Like
a
kind of
radical
building.
ideology. It helps do that. It's the same reason that you'll see a lot of these ignorant campaigns that are shoved into poverty communities. It's the same thing with welfare, birth control, and that. As Bill Gates has even said, to control the less desirable population, people that they consider deadbeats or inferior. This is like, if you look into this is all ways that they do that. And if you go out and make an ass of yourself and start beating people up because you have this hatred in your heart, then yeah, it's going to cause all sorts of problems in your life, and it's going to show and reflect in all aspects of your life, right? So again, this goes back to, and I understand that may be a tangent, but this is all connected, because if you do stuff just because somebody tells you and you have this like false conviction, we all have false convictions, right? It's like I even have false convictions on some aspects, where I thought, oh, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna spend money and it'll pan out, right? I'll spend this money here and that, and it'll just pan out. Without like taking the conviction to understand, like, okay, hey, we're taking that reality check both with myself, and then also a better understanding of and doing something because I know it's like to be true, meaning that I am essentially like, if I actually took a step back, right, and I like, hey, I see this project over here, I see it's going to take $3,000, I know I can make $10,000 on it, whatever it may be. And I was like, oh yeah, I could know that to be true. I could do this conviction or believe this. But at the end of the day, if I don't take in consideration, like, hey, I already have 10 other projects that aren't finished over here. I already have all these other things that are stacking up. And I need to take full account of myself. And so as a result of that, I'm not going to be able to handle this. And I need to be self-aware enough to be able to say, like, hey, no, it's not because it's not a great opportunity. It's because I need to focus on these other things, right? And I need to stop taking things out of context, or I need to stop, like, well, it's the same. A better example would probably be is if when people see like all these new shiny things like cryptocurrency, NFTs, blah blah blah, they're like, hey, you should leave what you are doing right now because this guy just made 50 million,
Right.
right? And you can show the money and everything all day, but you don't understand that that's an influx, right? That's not sustainable and it's not a long-term deal. And so
Yeah.
most of the people that have made money in that have lost their ass. They're
That
now
shiny
homeless.
object syndrome is all over the place, right? And yeah, like anybody that's like kind of deep into crypto, at least in my little network, my little sphere, it's up and down every day. Like one minute they're like, crypto millionaires, and the next they're like, oh, this sucks, this is awful, where'd all my money go? And I mean, you got to be in it for the long haul, just like you have to be with anything if you're going to find success, right? There's not going to be like an overnight success to become a YouTuber, post one video and call it a day, and have hundreds of thousands of dollars rolling in. You've got to build on that, and really kind of to the topic of the start of the conversation of like, what you think you should do versus why you should do it. And even if I don't appreciate where the information's coming from, it's probably coming from some angle, some way that, like you said, it's probably my opportunity to kind of like dig deep within myself to find out, like, what is there a point to that? Maybe I can't stand this person and some of the things that they say, but is there a point to what they're saying? Is there an opportunity for me to improve? And that's really at the end of the day what it is self improvement and
Well,
helping people's
self-awareness and
values
everything
rise
else, which
together.
is kind of what that point was and why I kind of went into that. I understand that it is probably hard to follow that train of thought that I have because my brain will go 15 different directions all at once, and that which makes it hard to articulate. Like communication is a skill I have proactively have to work on. But there's again two different caveats of it. It's doing something that you know to be true, as which means like, hey, if I'm like, for example, I can know that I can make money doing pretty much anything, right? I know that, but I also have to take in consideration and make sure that I'm not taking out of context the fact that I understand, like, hey, if I don't focus my efforts towards one of those tasks consistently, I will never gain traction in any of them, right? And it's the same thing with all these other ideologies, and that there's a lot of people that you'll find, again, even in personal life, when they'll bounce to any new religion just because it's something new, something different, as opposed to something that they actually know to be true. And so they'll take that little context and they're like, well, that stopped my progress or whatever. So I'm just going to go to the next new shiny thing, the next new shiny thing, and the next new shiny thing. And then they wonder why they don't gain any traction in their personal life or their business life or spiritual life or anything else, right? So this is where consistency and action, and it's not saying that you just stay with one religion and completely turn your ears off to everything else. It's saying that you will never find anything that you are completely at peace with because you are a constantly evolving human being yourself. You are constantly changing and pivoting. And if you're growing, then that is normal to question those things, right? It is normal to do that. And that is both in business and in personal life. So
Yeah,
I
I mean, Ed
actually
Milet
encourage.
talks about that a lot of like, the cells in your body kind of regenerate or within, every 6 weeks or whatever, right? Like you're a different person every so often there. And so it's your opportunity to continue to build on that next version, that next level of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So you're, again, the main premise of this and the biggest value or lesson that I actually want you to get out of this is that you can, like, you can learn everything and you can go and get into that. And if you looked at I think it was last week that we talked about getting into that death trap of always trying to learn and never taking action.
Hmm.
So that comes into play on this, right? You have to take, it's just like a scientific experiment. You can have all these ideologies through your head, and you can spin up 50 billion different hypotheses on how the universe works and everything else. And you might be right on some of them, but until you actually take action and put it through the scientific theory and prove out the hypothesis into a theory, then you will never know for certain which of those have any grounds or traction, right? And so are like, this is something I encourage everybody to do in their again, personal life, their business life, and everything else, is take knowledge, take action on that knowledge, prove out the theory or the hypothesis and what we know to be true, and keep proving it. Just because you find one thing that works doesn't mean that there isn't other stuff that is also true. And if you find that there's two things true that contradict each other, or at least in your mind, that also means that there's a third piece of information you're missing somewhere. But you would never know that until that, like, you actually prove out the other theories, the other hypotheses, and so forth, which is why if you have that ideology and that understanding, it also allows you to move forward on everything else, to where you don't get fooled by the next political BS, the media, when they start trying to shove lies and use tidbits of truth or little tiny little factoids and that out of context, because you know for yourself that you get to test those over and over and over again on different things. And you're like, well, yeah, that might be true, but there's also this, and this is true as well, which means that that's actually not, like, the conclusion you came to is still wrong. Even though the evidence that you have supports it, all these other things actually show that it contradicts it. And so thus that can't be true. This is, so in business, how that would apply is, for example, you can have a perfect sales pitch, a perfect business, a perfect everything else, and the person could be absolute trash, get zero sales, right?
Yep.
And it's like, well, see, that proves that the business doesn't work. The business is trash. The sales pitch was trash. Everything else is trash. But then you look at it, and he was trying to sell ice to Eskimos. Like,
What the imagery that just came to mind, I don't know, is Back to the Future when Marty goes back and he sees Doc, in 1955, and he's got the thing on there, and he's like, "Do you know what this means? It means that this thing doesn't work at all." Like, he goes back to the Brown Mansion there and stuff. But right, is it really that it didn't work, or is it really
there's another
something else?
piece that you are missing. That is the point of this. And so this is where it's so important to understand. And if you've listened through some of my ramblings to get to this point, this is where the filter, like with any conversation, any podcast, anything, it is a lot of digging through fill dirt to find the nuggets of gold. And so the nugget of gold I would hope that you're doing is prove out all the hypotheses, all the theories in your life, to where you can actually find for yourself and know for a fact what is true or not true, what is backed up by history and not true. And then understand too that there might be one key piece of information that you're given that completely undermines everything. But it doesn't mean too that it is actually true or valid, right? So you prove out those things, and people are like, well, I don't know how to do that. That seems like a lot of work. Well, yeah, it is. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. It is a lot of work. And if you want to be successful and everything else, then you need to be able to prove it out and figure it out. And a lot of the times you may be wrong, but it's being able to take accountability for when you are wrong and being able to pivot and adjust yourself to where, like, hey, yeah, you're right. That was wrong and everything. That was out of context and everything. I now have all this other stuff that actually disproves that. Or I found out that that person was lying about this, what they said here. Or when I looked into it, I realized that there wasn't enough supporting evidence of that. Or, hey, this person was literally making crap up out their backside, and that it's the same. I always equivalent to, like, for example, whenever you have somebody that's translating ancient Egyptian or something like that, and they're like, oh yeah, this is what this says, and this is what this says. And then you actually look into their credentials. It has nothing to do with, like, they have no backing or anything to support it. And I just think it's funny in that. So think of it as this way: is like when we are pretty much an extinct civilization and somebody else is here, which will eventually happen, and that people will probably look at our graffiti on the walls of some of the building and think that it's some kind of ancient form of murals or testimony or, other stuff and everything. And it's like, no, it was a prick that was writing profanity all over the wall and everything. But you guarantee, like, some other future civilization, oh yeah, this is how things worked back then, and blah blah blah. And so you take that with a grain of salt, right?
Well, now you've shifted my thinking of like the petroglyphs in southern central Utah. Like, like who was it? Was it like, one of the people of the village that, is like, hey, don't write on the wall. And I'll show you right on the wall. I'm going to draw our family right here. And a couple of lambs and sheep too. Like.
And some of them were storytellers, right? If you look at some of the ancient stories of other people that were around, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing also with telephone, right? And it's the same reason that, like, how many people have you gotten mad at because of something that someone else said to you that they said?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And
if you follow that, so if, like, for example,
wasn't even there to give that context either, right? That it supposedly came from.
Yeah. So, like, if one of my employees said, oh, hey, Danny was bashing on you behind your back and everything. He was saying that you're a prick and an undesirable person, and wasn't very pleasant to get along with. He just puts up with you because of that. Well, luckily, I know Danny well enough to be like, hey, that sounds like BS to me, right? But if you don't know that and you hear somebody's talking crap or whatever else, then you're like, a lot of people's natural response is to believe it, and either they'll refuse to talk to that person moving forward on a false assumption, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or they will cause a conflict and destroy a relationship because they believe that person over giving that person the benefit of the doubt. Right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, my family experienced something just like that this past year as well, where a less than desired source said, "Can you believe what so and so said about your family?" And it was it played out exactly like you just
Sometimes
described.
it's true,
And it was this really, really interesting, where we had nothing to do with what the source was saying, but so and so was upset at our family because of something, and all this stuff. So it was this game of telephone until, several months later, I had a moment with the person that supposedly said something, and the conversation was fine. It was nowhere even near what someone was trying to make it out to be. And so, yeah, it's absolutely consider the source, and then go to it. And, sometimes you might have a hard conversation. This conversation wasn't hard at all for the one that I was having, but if I believe what the original source is saying, it could have been, damaging towards two families and friends, and it absolutely couldn't have been further from that. So, yeah, it's your opportunity.
I mean,
really
it's very easy too, and this comes into the other aspect where, as you refuse, and so again, it's a two-edged sword here. As you do things because out of the pursuit of finding knowledge and out of trying to figure out what the truth actually is, and going to and confronting those things with a level of or with a focus on understanding first, that avoids a lot of conflict and discomfort later on. And especially when you, like, try to go with a level of understanding or compassion or passivity. Like, I met, I don't know if I told you this. I had actually met one of the former employees, that had stolen a substantial amount of money from us, like a substantial chunk of money. And my immediate impulse, especially just being in that room with them, was all that stress, all that anxiety, all that, like, hatred and everything else for that person. And I had to put myself in check and be like, you know what? Maybe just on a level of understanding. I'm not going to give them another chance or anything, but it doesn't change that maybe they're in a different phase of life. Maybe they've improved, maybe they've bettered themselves and everything else. And what good does confronting that person or causing issues do? Right?
Hmm.
It doesn't do me any good. It doesn't make me look good. It doesn't make them look bad or anything. It does no good across the board. And so as I went into that conversation, I looked, let them talk and everything, kept my mouth shut. They were talking to some other people. I was sitting out in the background. They didn't even notice me for a while. and then the moment that somebody asked me to speak and everything, I watched all the color drain out of their face and like pure panic and everything.
I would almost
Because
love to have been there for this.
yeah, and they knew that I had every ability and every right to destroy that person.
Mm.
But at the same time, again, this is about bettering yourself, being the better, achieving the best outcome, the best ROI in life. And the best
Yeah.
ROI that I saw is I saw that they were happy in the career that they were at. I don't know if they were better as a person or anything else. And so I saw the best resolution is just leaving it as, hey, I'm glad that you're in a career that it looks like you enjoy better and everything.
Yeah.
I wish you the best of luck in life.
Yeah.
And leaving it at that and letting go of all that anger, anxiety, frustration, everything else. But if you listen to the rest of the world, most of the world is going to tell you that you have every right to be destructive, cause as much hell for that person because they tried to ruin your life. They pretty much try to make you homeless, blah, blah, blah. Like the list and reasons goes on and on. But when you do that, and if you engage into something that you're told to be true, as opposed to what you actually know to be true, and take a second to think things through, it allows you to get a much better desirable outcome.
Yeah.
Because again, if I had engaged in that, I would be the one that looks bad to everybody else, not them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so true because it's your opportunity to be the bigger person. And at the end of the day, regardless of how you look, it's how you're going to feel, right? Other people are going to perceive you however they're going to perceive and make,
And you can
judgments
let
and
that
whatnot. Like,
toxicity fester in you.
exactly. It's like drinking poison and, hoping that the other person dies or whatever, right? Like it's, it's not going to do you any good to not take the high road, as despite it being, it's difficult to do sometimes, maybe a lot of times.
And I know this is again off topic, but this wraps around, goes almost to a 360 and gets to the point where forgiveness is not for the transgressor, it's for the transgressed.
Yeah.
And I don't care what your religious beliefs are or political or whatever else, that stands true regardless. Because when you hold on to things that people did or hold on to business decisions or mistakes you've made in business, and you don't forgive yourself for the mistakes you made in your company, the mistakes you made in your personal life, the mistakes you did and all this other stuff, you are the one holding yourself back, not anybody else. It's you.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned that, I mean, just something that I saw a post of a friend. He's a family therapist. He actually made a forgiveness course that he's taught. And again, regardless of religious affiliation or anything like that, he has taught this at BYU Education Week and stuff. Anyway, I've never been to that, but it was intriguing because I saw his post on Facebook last night. And he said, since 2006, I've studied and researched forgiveness as a therapeutic tool we all need in order to heal from painful hurts others have committed against us. And then he says this: forgiveness is not just a religious topic. I've taught these classes now at BYU Education Week several times. After having so many people who struggled with heart-wrenching offenses come up after class and tearfully tell me that they now finally know how to forgive and move forward in their lives, I decided to create a new course. And he goes on from there. But as he basically has built like an entire course around helping people figure out that forgiveness. And I think I would be willing to bet that the bottom line of the course is just like you said, not for the transgressor, but the transgressed, right? Like the person who's had these wrongs against them. and how do they lift that burden off of their lives, and so that they can move forward. Because they're not going to change the transgressor, right? You're just not going to. They could be sorry. Might not be sorry. You can't control any of that, but you got to figure out what you can do on the
A lot of
controllables,
people are not.
and it's
Like
you.
I was watching. There was a video of a father in a courtroom, and the person in that court, like that was being sentenced, got away with pretty much. I want to say it was like 18 years for raping and killing their daughter. And I still remember, like, the outstanding, like, that guy deserves to suffer horrifically. Like, he does not deserve to be on this earth. He deserves like a very horrific death and everything, especially since he had such a smug face, um, of zero remorse and everything else. And I still remember for that, which, um, I've seen both sides. I've seen the guy that literally lunged over the witness stand and pretty much tried to strangle him and ended up getting arrested. And luckily, they got it dismissed as like a temporary insanity or loss of judgment. But it doesn't change that that still caused a lot of headaches for that person. But what this father did, he's like, I understand that nothing I do to you or nothing that can be done by the system or anything else, will ever change or bring me my daughter back. Um, and if I hold on to this, it's going to fester and it's going to destroy the rest of my family. And I'm refusing to give you power over my life. And moving here, I simply wish you the best. I hope that you are able to truly change and become a better person and everything else for your life and everybody you're associated with. But as for this and everything, from this point on, you're done affecting my family or me and my family. And I was
Wow.
like, that was powerful. And it was a very similar thing too. Now, regardless of what happened later, um, Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped, obviously, has been disappeared for a long time.
Yep.
When they found her, the mom said a very similar thing. And this was something, again, that changed my life monumentally, which was that man has taken enough out of your life and your past. Don't let him take a second longer of your future.
I love it. That's amazing.
And that is powerful. If you truly understand that, if you truly understand that, like, that tidbit of information, as you approach different aspects of your life with that attitude, you are so much like all that hatred, resentment, and everything, you can just let it go. Like, you don't have to hold on it. You don't have to do that. And it is literally like boulders being wrenched off of your back.
Yes.
And I promise you can do that. It's not easy. It is not overnight and everything.
No.
I still have
A lot
things
of
that I struggle with. I still have things that will come up and everything. People that wronged me, people that lied, manipulated, and whatever. And I still have to fight with those on a daily basis, those demons and that. But I've noticed, like, as time goes on and move forward, that it becomes substantially easier. It's just like a muscle that you're building, right? Like, every single time I'm like, hey, you know what? I would really like to drink and cope with this right now, but that doesn't do me any good. That doesn't benefit me or anything else. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
It gets easier and easier and easier.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. And one last quote that, as I was sharing earlier, he had another quote on this thing. He says, "Forgiveness," by Lily Tomlin. "Forgiveness is letting go of all hope for having a better past." It's like, wow, that's pretty big. Like, forgiveness is letting go of all hope for having a better past. It's like, I hope I have a better past, right? Like it can't exist, right? I hope you
It
could wish it
can't.
could or whatever, but
But your
you know,
path,
getting past it. Yeah.
this goes back to, I know we brought this up on previous podcasts before as well. The past and some of some of the kindest, most loving, most forgiving people are the people that have had the most messed up, horrific things happen to them.
100%.
Because and they're also the ones that have typically done a lot of those horrific things. And they understand, like, hey, I have no reason to judge. I have no reason to ever point the finger at you because I know that I myself have a ton of work to do. So going back to the original topic of the post and this podcast is when we do things and we all have this very misconstrued ideology that the world teaches us on doing things because we're told that it's okay, that we're doing things that we're told that other people are successful at, that other people have done well with, that other people that made them feel better, whether it was, revenge killing somebody or anything else, or, as drastic as that, because there's definitely, like, that father had every right to a revenge killing that on that his daughter's killer, just as much as the other people. Just like that church, the mass shooting in that, where everybody in that church and that actually spoke forgiveness and wished the best and said, I really hope that you find better relationship with God, Christ, or your creator, whatever you believe in, right? I hope you come to peace in that. Like, I can't get back, but I hope you have a better future. If you actually watch the video from all the testimonials, like, that was probably one of the most powerful courts I've ever seen, as far as that goes. But stop feeding into the toxicity and everything else, and understand that if you do things the way that the world has always said that is okay, as opposed to why you should do something, and you think things through and that. So if you don't think things through, you're going to have a life of misery, hatred, all these burdens, stress, anxiety. Everything in your life will be harder. Building your business will be harder. Maintaining your family will be harder. Everything else will be harder. So if you go through it to the attitude that we've said, which is forgiveness, understanding, compassion, everything else, like, you might not see that, but again, you will thrive in your business. You will thrive in your personal family life. You will see your kids, like, relationship with your kids and everything get better, and other people around you, because you have a different energy you're bringing to the table. So that's all I have to say. Danny, I will let you close out. What other final thoughts do you have on doing things? Because again, to better ourselves and what we know to be true, as opposed to what we're told, and going for the shiny things.
Yeah, I think that beware of shiny object syndrome, as a friend of mine likes to call it. And just kind of when everything kind of goes sideways and things like that, just you can be that North Star, you can be that focus, because you can't help others until you put others, your oxygen mask on first, so to speak, on the airplane. And so just there's controlling the uncontrollables. You can't do that, but you can control the controllables, which is you, and always go back and focus on that. And when you're looking at improving yourself and you're not loving the advice that somebody gives you, what you think you should do versus why you should do it, maybe there might be something to it, is despite where that feedback might be coming from. It's kind of like talking to people where they might be going to do something, but because you said you're going to do it, like kids, for example, they might be walking to the room to do their homework. And it's like, oh, hey, make sure you don't forget to do your homework. And because that they were going to do it, but you said that they were going to do it and they were going to already do it, that now they're not going to do it because you said to go and do it. Right.
No,
Don't be like
yeah,
that. Right.
because
Like,
it's because you told them to, not because they wanted to.
that's exactly right. Right. So
I
kind of
found
take
that,
it with a grain
and
of
this,
salt.
yeah, and this is one of those things that I've noticed, especially with my kids, that a lot. Okay, and this will cycle. You will go through times in that where, like, for example, when I gave them attention, I gave them tasks, I gave them purpose, and I made sure that, like, they had their tasks complete. We worked through. I supported them to get those done, everybody had a clear role, and then I fulfilled and on my back end to spend quality time with them, do a game, whatever, they thrive, right? And I have all that stress off of me. I do have all this other things off of me. But when I focus on strictly work and everything, and unfortunately, I have got to the point a couple times where I'm just working, and the structure falls apart for them. The reassurance, the quality time, everything else falls apart and goes away, right? And there's two different sides in that. A lot of people will bounce between complete, like giving all the attention, all the love, the squeezy, like the lovey-dovey and everything, um, and then they will completely flip to ignore or anything. They think it's like one or the other, but it's interesting when you support other people around you to thrive and have a structure and like a clear expectation of what's expected of them.
Yeah.
They actually will step up typically to that plate when you have faith and confidence in that and enable them to do that. And they will do it because they know it to be true. Getting back to the topic of this podcast, not because they were told to do it, right?
Yep.
So if you
Absolutely.
look at the Dale Carnegie and that how to make friends and influence people, it again talks about a lot of that, which is like aligning your interests and making sure that you understand like what they actually want, what their needs are, and how to support them to do that in that role. Because as that you support them, they'll actually support you, which is the same principle in Christianity, again, Islam, Buddhism, or anything, which is the more you give, the more you receive, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Good karma, bad karma goes around. So
Yeah. Love it. I think that's
challenge
a
you
great
guys
point to
tonight.
finish
Just
on. Yeah.
take one aspect of your life, one little thing. I promise you, as you see that and apply this to one aspect of your life, whether it's your kid's personal life or anything else, and you drastically, like you start seeing, like just keep consistent with it because they might see, especially if you haven't been your word before, it might be an easy thing where it's like if you have foster kids, right? If you're being nice to them, they think, oh, hey, this is just temporary. So they act out more to prove themselves right that you're just going to leave or abandon. But if you keep consistent again with them and say, hey, I'm not going anywhere, I'm here to take care of you or anything, then eventually they realize and trust you. And that as much as you have to endure through that hell and them trying to push you away to prove that. But as you refuse to enable or engage in that, and if you take some of these principles, forgiveness and kindness and understanding and everything else and support them regardless, watch how quickly your entire life like flips. Like it is crazy. And I promise you, it's like crack, and a good kind of crack. And that which is just because it's addictive, because then you want to apply it to all aspects and see the changes that you can make and see the changes that come to fruition. And you'll start seeing a lot of things that you've been fighting and fighting and fighting against for forever that magically finally click and things just line up.
Yeah. 100%. Totally agree. Totally agree.
All right. Well, again, remember to like, share this podcast if you got value out of it. And even if you don't want to do that until you actually see some of the results, that's great. But just be your word. Go do it, apply it, see if what we're actually telling you is proven through scientific theory, and proving out that hypothesis and that, because again, you don't have to take what our word is as just fact. But I'm telling you, as you actually apply this principles and everything, you will see for yourself. I'm not expecting you to just blindly believe anything that me or Danny is saying here.
100%.
We encourage you to apply it in your life and actually see it for yourself, the changes in the life that you can have. So again, if you like that, got value out of this, please like it, please share it, and tell us why or what you even didn't like about it. Again, we're fine with that. We have thick skin. We can deal with that. But until next time, see you on the next podcast.
Peace.